The Meridian defense line was breaking apart. The stars outside the viewport looked like sparks from a dying fire. Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge of his cruiser, jaw tight, uniform half-torn, eyes fixed on the swarm of ships closing in. Every few seconds, another explosion lit the sky and shook the hull. Main reactors overheating, the engineer shouted, "We've lost engine control." Ward gripped the rail. "Lock down engineering. Route power to the vent turrets." "Yes, sir." The air trembled as the next blast hit. The crew moved fast, faces pale in the hard blue light. The smell of burning metal filled the bridge. Behind them, the planet glowed red with the fire of broken cities. Meridian was supposed to be a symbol of unity, but now it was only smoke. An alert flashed. The Dominion fleet was pushing through the last defense ring. Their cruisers formed a wall of steel and light. The comms officer turned from her station, voice flat. Command says hold positions until they recalibrate jump routes. Ward looked at her, disbelief raw on his face. Recalibrate? They're not coming to help. The officer didn't speak. She knew it too. The council had already chosen who would live and who would burn. The Meridian line had been sacrificed too by time for others to escape. Ward slammed his fist on the console. Plates cracked under his hand. "Patch me through to the fleet." The comms flickered, static. Then a dozen voices answered, full of noise and panic. "This is Nova Wing. We've lost control thrusters." "Engine fire on the Drake? We're going down." "Where are reinforcements?" Ward's voice cut through the channel. "All remaining ships fall back to Vector 12. Protect evacuation routes. Do not waste lives on empty ground." Someone shouted over him. "Command says, stay on station." "Then Command isn't here watching us die," Ward said. His tone left no argument. The fleet began to break away, small groups peeling off like fragments from a wave. Dominion fighters hunted them mercilessly. One strike tore through the cruiser beside the Resolute. The glare blinded the bridge for an instant. When the light cleared, half of Sector 9 was gone. The deck rocked again. The helmsman shouted, "They've locked missiles. We have 30 seconds before impact." Ward turned to his crew. "Prep escape pods." Now, a young lieutenant hesitated. "Sir, procedure. Forget procedure." His voice lowered but carried more weight than any order. "Get everyone you can out of here." The bridge burst into motion. The floor plates burned under their boots. Smoke rolled down from the ceiling vents. Ward could hear people crying somewhere down the corridor, but nobody stopped working. As the first pod launched, Ward stayed at the command terminal, typing in manual override codes. If the Dominion took the ship intact, they could track the pod signals. He wouldn't let that happen. The terminal blinked red. Denial. He cursed under his breath and tried again. "Captain, you have to go," the comms officer shouted. Ward glanced at the viewport. The enemy fleet grew larger by the second. The stars disappeared behind the fire. He opened the last hatch and pulled the safety lever. The escape pods launched like small bullets into the dark. Silence fell. Only the whine of failing engines remained. The final shell struck the hull. The bridge split apart, throwing Ward to the deck. His breath caught as a burst of light swallowed the bow of the ship. The world went white and then black. When he opened his eyes, there was only cold air and a faint green light overhead. He lay pinned inside twisted metal, alone. A soft hiss came from somewhere behind him. Then a voice, calm and steady, spoke through the dust. "Captain Ward, stay still. We're pulling you out." He froze. The voice was human, but it wasn't any of his crew. Blinding light filled the gap, then flickered out. The air smelled like rust and smoke. Captain Elias Ward blinked, tried to move, and felt cold hands grip his shoulder. Metal scraped and shifted above him. He coughed, dust filling his lungs, and pushed against the wreckage. "Don't fight it," the voice said again. "You're safe." He turned his head. Two figures in black armor were cutting through the twisted hull. The glow of their torches lit narrow faces behind scratched helmets. One held a rifle against his chest, eyes scanning the dark. The other reached down and pulled Ward free with a grunt. Ward fell hard onto a grated floor. His body throbbed with pain, but he forced himself to stand. Around him was a dim cargo bay, built from steel plates and old ship parts. No insignia, no markings of rank, only patched uniforms and unshaven faces. "Who are you?" Ward asked. A woman stepped forward. Her armor was dented, her blonde hair trimmed short. There was confidence in the way she moved, controlled and quiet. "I'm Commander Lyra Holt," she said. "You're aboard the ship, Nomad. We pulled your pod out of orbit near Meridian before the scavengers got there." Ward's head spun. "Meridian is gone. Everything around it too," Holt said. "You're lucky to be breathing." He wiped blood from his brow and stared at her troops. None of them wore official colors. The emblem on their sleeves was just a single white stripe. He recognized it. And the Ghost Division. Soldiers who'd vanished from both armies years ago. "You could have left me," he said. Holt gave a small shrug. "We don't leave people floating." Ward looked around again. The Ghost Division moved like old veterans, checking weapons, fixing armor, whispering code words. The air hummed with the low growl of engines. It smelled like oil and ozone. Holt handed Ward a flask. "Drink. You'll need it." He took a small sip. It burned down his throat. "What's your mission?" She gave him a hard look. "You don't get to ask that yet." A door opened at the far end of the bay. A tall man entered, his rifle leaning across his shoulder. His face was lined with fatigue. "This is Lieutenant Cross," Holt said. "He'll show you around." Ward froze at the name. Cross had served in the Dominion fleet. Same Dominion fleet that had destroyed Meridian. "You were there," Ward said sharply. Cross met his eyes without flinching. "Yeah, I was. Orders sent us to that system. We followed them." Ward's fists clenched. "You killed thousands." Cross nodded. "And it never sat right. That's why I left." Holt stepped between them. "Both of you, stop. We have work." Ward glared at Cross one last time, then forced himself to step back. "What kind of work?" Holt walked to the command console and brought up a projection. A blue image filled the room, showing Titan, Saturn's moon, covered with fortresses and shipyards. "This is Titan base now," she said. "Dominion control."
"Oh."
"They're building something big, and not just another weapon." "We think it's a suncracker." The words hit Ward like ice. "That's a myth. It's real," Holt said. "A weapon that can collapse a star system. If they finish it, nobody will have a place left to hide." Cross pointed to the outer edge of the map. "We found weak spots in their shields. We're going in." Ward looked around the room. There were only 20 soldiers. Their armor was mismatched, their ship barely holding together. "You're going to attack that with this?" Holt smirked slightly. "We've done more with less." Ward could see it in their faces. These were people who had stopped caring about politics, about honor, about flags. They cared only about ending the war. He ran a hand over his face. "When do we leave?" "Now," Holt said. "You in?" Ward glanced at Cross again. His heart burned, but his answer was steady. "I'm in." The lights dimmed. Alarm tones echoed across the deck. Men and women strapped into harnesses as the Nomad's engines roared to life. The ship turned, diving toward deep space. As Ward took his seat beside Holt, a light flickered red on the console. Short burst of static filled the air, then a message punched through. "New feed from Titan base," the text said. "Looks like they're ahead of schedule." The screen flickered. In the blur of data and noise, Ward saw a metal forge glowing in the dark and the start of something far worse taking shape. The Nomad dropped from stealth above Titan's gray horizon. The moon was covered with iron bunkers and bright forges that burned through its surface. A thin mist of smoke stretched into orbit. From a distance, the Dominion shipyards looked calm. Up close, they were alive with war machines. Inside the drop bay, Ward checked his rifle and sealed his helmet. The air smelled like fuel and sweat. Around him, the Ghost Division sat in silence, waiting for Holt's signal. Red lights blinked across their armor. "Stay tight and stay quiet," Holt said. Her voice came through the comm. "Once we hit the outer vents, we move fast. No second chances." The ship rocked as they entered the lower atmosphere. The floor shook from anti-air blasts outside. Sparks rained down from overhead panels. Cross stood by the door controls, calm and still. When Ward looked at him, the old anger stirred again. Cross had once been the enemy, but now he was the one leading them through the approach codes. Holt had made it clear. Without him, they would never get inside. The ramp opened to a rush of white smoke and wind. Titan's surface was a wasteland of ash and steel. Giant heat vents rose and rose, glowing red under the black sky. "Move," Holt ordered. They ran, their boots clanging against metal. The sound of Dominion engines rolled across the valley. Ward could smell ozone every time the ground guns fired in the distance. The team reached a maintenance hatch under one of the vents. Cross tapped a code into his wrist pad, and the door opened with a low hiss. Inside was a maze of pipes and cables. The air was thick and hot. Everything hummed. They moved like shadows through narrow corridors, sometimes stopping to listen as patrols passed overhead. Ward whispered, "How deep are we going?" "Level 3, Holt said. "Straight to the core, plant charges, and get out." Cross led them down. The deeper they went, the louder the sound of machinery became. Sparks flickered from broken conduits. The walls shuddered, alive with power. They reached a massive chamber lined with glowing tanks and cranes. At the center stood the weapon core. It was giant, a furnace of blinding light trapped inside glass shields. Workers in Dominion armor moved around it. The sound of drills and plasma welders echoed over the platform. "That's their heart," Holt said quietly. "Once this lights, every colony around here burns." Ward gritted his teeth and started placing charges along the support beams. His gloves shook as he clipped each detonator. He could hear Cross working a few meters away, inputting access codes to overload the coolant system. An alarm blared. A red light flooded the chamber. Security breach. An amplified voice shouted from the upper deck. Ward turned. Dozens of Dominion soldiers were rushing down the stairs. Holt shouted, "Cover fire!" The room erupted. Bullets tore through steam and sparks. Ward slid behind a console and returned shots. The Ghost Division fought hard, but they were outnumbered. One by one, his team fell back toward the exits. Cross stayed behind the control screen, pressing keys faster. "I can open the vent shaft, but someone has to stay to lock it." Ward saw the door controls spark. He shook his head. "You're not staying." "IO Meridian," Cross said. He gave Ward a quick look, half a smile, and slammed his palm on the override. The floodgates closed around him as fire burst across the chamber. Ward shouted his name, but the wall of flame drowned his voice. Holt grabbed Ward's arm. He knew what he was doing. They ran as the charges armed. The tunnel behind them collapsed. They dove into the escape duct as the base exploded, turning the cavern into a storm of shrapnel and smoke. When they reached the surface, the Nomad was already dropping low for pickup. Ward was the last to climb aboard. He turned once more toward the burning base. The glow from the crater lit the sky. Inside the ship, Holt stared at the fire through the viewport. "He sealed it," she said softly. "The weapon's gone." Ward didn't answer. Sat down hard, breathing through the ache in his ribs. Across the deck, a small screen blinked once and came alive. "Commander Holt," the ship's tech said. "Incoming message. Dominion fleet forming near Mars. Something big is moving." Holt met Ward's eyes. "Cross bought us minutes, maybe hours. Use them." Ward looked at the flames fading in the distance. He could still hear Cross's voice in his head. The war was far from done, and now Mars waited. The Nomad drifted among the cold rings of Saturn. Its hull was scorched, engines cracked, vents leaking steam. Inside, every light flickered. The corridors smelled of burnt wiring and sweat. Men and women worked in silence, repairing armor, replacing fuses, wrapping bloody hands in torn cloth. Captain Elias Ward stood on the command deck over a pile of damage reports. Half of their systems were shot. 2 supply ships had vanished after the Titan blast. He tried not to think about Cross. Holt walked in, still in her armor. Her face was pale, jaw tight. "He gave us a win," she said. "Don't waste it." Ward didn't look up. "One base down doesn't matter if the Dominion builds another." She crossed her arms. That base was everything. Without it, their weapons gone. You saw it burn. Ward stared at the viewport. The curve of Saturn glowed below, silent and perfect. Far beyond, war was still raging. "They'll move the operation. They always do." He turned to the crew. "How many are left?" The navigator checked her screen. 17 ships answering our signal. Maybe 30 more scattered across the outer belt. Ward spoke louder. "Call them in. We regroup, rebuild, and strike again before the Dominion reaches Mars." Holt frowned. "That's suicide. Their fleet's twice our size." Ward walked closer. So we stay here and wait for them to finish the job? A voice broke through the cum. Static. Then words. This is Captain Duran of the Vanguard. We need orders. The Council just transmitted a ceasefire request to Dominion Command. They called it a peace arrangement. Everyone froze. Holt swore quietly. Peace arrangement? After everything? Ward grabbed the receiver. Repeat that. The Federation Council is opening talks, Duran said. To end the war by merging command structures under Dominion oversight, Ward slammed his fist down. That's not peace. That's surrender. The bridge went silent again. The only sound was the soft hum of the failing reactor. Holt stared at the floor. So this was the plan. Let us bleed out while they trade what's left. Ward leaned on the table. I fought for the Federation my whole life. Meridian, Titan, every dead name. And now they hand control to the same people who burned it all down. He paced once, stopped and looked up. We stopped this deal. Both sides. Dominion Federation, all of them. The crew exchanged quick looks. No one spoke. Holt stepped forward. You're talking about burning every chain that holds us. If we go through with that, there's no going back. Ward met her eyes. Good. She studied him for a long second, then nodded. Then we do it right. The Dominion fleet is gathering near Mars. The Federation Council is sending their delegates there. One strike hits them both. Ward exhaled slowly. Pull every ship that still flies. Scavengers, deserters, anyone who hasn't given up. Hours passed as the message spread. Flickering screens lit the faces of men and women across the scattered fleet. Ships ignited engines one by one, answering the call. Later, Holt found Ward alone by the viewport. Saturn's light cast silver over his scars. You ever wonder if we cross a line we can't come back from? She asked. He didn't take his eyes off the stars. We crossed it the day Meridian fell. She placed a hand on the glass beside him. Then we make it mean something. He nodded, eyes hard again. Plot the jump to Mars. Engines began to warm. The vibration filled the deck, building like thunder. Outside, dozens of small ships formed up around the Nomad. They looked fragile, weak, but they all moved with purpose. Then a blip appeared on the radar. The sensor tech gasped, coming transmission from Mars orbit. It's not Dominion code. Ward leaned forward. Patch it? A man's voice came through the static, flat and cold. This is Admiral Kane of the Sovereign Command. Captain Ward, I see your little fleet coming. You should have stayed dead at Meridian. Ward's face went still. Holt stepped closer, waiting for his answer. He looked out at the dark again. Tell him we're bringing the answer Meridian never gave him. The deck lights turned red. The fleet prepared for war. Far ahead, Mars glowed like a target waiting to be hit. The jump tore open space around Mars. When the light cleared, the ragged fleet of the Ghost Division faced the Dominion Armada. The red planet burned below like an old scar. Thousands of ships filled its orbit, steel grinding against steel as heavy guns turned toward them. On the bridge of the Nomad, alarms screamed. Ward gripped the edge of the console while the ship shook under the first wave of cannon fire. Shields falling, the tech shouted, "Can't take that kind of hit again." "Keep formation," Holt said. Her voice was firm, calm. She leaned over the command screen, eyes locked on the movement of the fleets. "They'll try to box us in. We hit straight through the middle before they close." Ward nodded. "All ships, charge weapons, and drive on the Sovereign. We cut the head off, or we die trying." The comms filled with static and voices shouting acknowledgement. Engines roared. The fleet surged forward as Dominion cruisers rained fire down from every direction. Outside, beams of light crossed like a storm. Dozens of ships tore apart, burning into fragments that fell into Mars's thin sky. Hulls screamed under the pressure of impact. Inside, the deck trembled with every blast. Ward's helm officer yelled, "We lost the Vanguard and 2 escorts." Holt barely blinked. "Stay the course." They tore through the chaos, gunfire shaking the hull. Ward watched the Sovereign grow larger on the screen. It was a moving fortress nearly as big as a city, surrounded by layers of defense. "Once we breach," Holt said, "get to the command core. The Council and the Dominion leaders are in that room." End this war in one strike. The Nomad smashed through the enemy line, flames trailing across its armor. Small craft darted out to protect it. Gun pods spun and fired until barrels overheated. When the Sovereign's shadow loomed over them, Ward's jaw set. Prepare to board. Magnetic clamps latched onto the hull. The Nomad's ramp extended, cutting into the enemy ship like a blade. Breach teams charged inside. The corridors of the Sovereign were filled with smoke and red lights. Gunfire echoed against steel panels. Ward led the way, rifle in hand, stepping over fallen soldiers. Every corner fought back. Holt followed, directing troops through coms. Deck 12 secure. Move fast before they seal us in. They reached the command deck after 30 minutes of brutal fighting. The air was hot and choked with dust. At the far end stood Admiral Kane, his coat torn, face burned but unshaken. Captain Ward, Kane said, voice calm in the noise. "We were supposed to die at Meridian." Ward lowered his rifle slightly. "You built all of this on the bodies of your own people." Kane straightened his cuffs with bloody fingers. "People don't stay united without fear. This war gave them purpose. You're trying to take that away." Ward stepped closer, eyes cold. "They don't need fear. They need a reason to live." Kane drew his pistol. "Then show me yours." Before he could fire, Holt shot across the room. Kane fell backward, hitting the console. Warning lights filled the bridge as the ship's reactor began to overload. Holt shouted, "We have to go." Ward looked at the dying admiral. No, he doesn't get the last word. He ripped a manual detonator from his belt and set it on the console. "If this ship stands, they'll rebuild again. It ends here." Holt grabbed his arm. "This will kill everyone still fighting out there." Ward looked through the cracked viewport. The fleets continued to fire, unaware that the Sovereign was burning inside. He opened a channel to all frequencies. His voice carried through static to every pilot still alive. "This is Elias Ward. No more masters. No more lines. Stop firing." At first, nothing changed. Then the guns fell silent, one ship at a time. Even the Dominion's heavy cannons powered down. Only the hum of battlefields dying out remained. Ward pressed the detonator. Light swallowed the bridge. The Sovereign erupted in a white blaze that cracked open Mars's orbit. Ow. The shock waves spread through the sky, scattering debris across the dark. When it cleared, the Nomad drifted on a broken wing among the wreckage. Half her hull burned away. Holt dragged Ward's limp body from a pile of debris. He coughed, eyes barely open. "Is it done?" he whispered. Holt looked through the viewport, where the fire still glowed. "It's done." He stopped. Ward closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. The silence outside felt heavy and final. Holt stared out at Mars, red dust curling across the stars. The war was over, but she knew something colder was coming. Power never vanished. It only waited for someone else to claim it. Behind her, a faint signal beeped on the com screen. Known source. Human code. Active again. She turned to look, and her face went still.